Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about bean lifecycle. So the Java class we are representing as a Spring Bean. The Java class which represented as a Spring Bean will be managed by IOC container, right? So object creation, object destruction, everything will be taken care by IOC container. So complete lifecycle of the object will be managed by IOC container. As part of this lifecycle, if you want to execute some life cycle methods, right? When the object got created, I want to execute some logic. When the object is getting removed from the IOC container, I want to execute some logic. So you can execute life cycle methods on the bean. These life cycle methods we can implement in two ways. One is by using interfaces concept, by using initializing bean and disposable bean. Second one is by using annotations like post construct and pre-destroy we can use. Okay, so if you go for interface approach, initializing bean interface contain after properties set method. So the name itself after properties is set. After your bean dependency injection got completed, then this method will be called. Next one is the disposable bean. It contains a destroy method before the bean object is removing from the IOC, this destroy method will be called. So here our class is tightly coupled because it is implementing interfaces of Spring framework. Sir, without implementing these interfaces, can we execute lifecycle methods? Yes, we can go with annotation approach. So to execute the lifecycle methods, we can use post construct annotation, pre-destroy annotation. Method name can be anything. For readability, I kept method name as init and destroy. You can keep any method name, start and stop like that. You can give any name for the method. Those methods will be executed as part of life cycle. This post construct and pre-destroy annotations are not from the Spring framework. These are Java X annotations. Our Spring is non-invasive framework, right? So whatever the Java X annotations we are using, Spring is understanding, Spring interpreting those annotations, and it is executing our methods. Okay, fine guys. So with this, we completed our discussion related to part one of our course. Spring Boot basics and Spring Boot internals we understood. So as part of our discussion so far, what we learned. So we are going to start the data JPA. So before going to start the data JPA, I want to summarize what we have learned as part of this part one. We discussed about what is framework. What is framework? Framework nothing but a semi-developed software which provides some common logics required for every application development. We have core Java, advanced Java, Spring, Hibernate, Struts, Spring Boot, MicroServices, right? So some are called as languages, some are called as technologies, some are called as framework. So we are learning framework. What is this framework? Framework is a semi-developed software which provides some common logics required for every application, like starting IOC container. It is a common requirement for every project. Opening a database connection, common requirement for every project. Okay, printing the logs, common requirement for every project. Such kind of common logics are provided by frameworks. So there are web application frameworks available, ORM frameworks are available. Struts is called as web framework. The frameworks which we are using to develop web applications are called as web framework. For example, Struts. Struts is one of the example for web framework. Third one is ORM frameworks. ORM frameworks, for example, Hibernate. Hibernate is a ORM framework which is used to develop persistence layer of our application. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. Hibernate is used to develop persistence layer, nothing but Database communication logic we are developing by using Hibernate framework. Can we develop entire project by using Hibernate? No. Hibernate can be used to develop only persistence logic. Can we develop entire project by using struts? No. Struts is only web framework. We can develop only web layer by using struts. By using ORM, we can develop only persistence layer. Next one is application development framework, which is called Spring. Application development framework. Example, Spring. Spring is called as application development framework because Spring framework we can use to develop the application end to end. Complete project can be developed by using Spring framework. Then Spring framework advantages. Spring framework advantages. Spring is an open source framework. Spring is open source framework. Spring is versatile framework. Spring framework can be integrated with any other framework available in the market. Like Spring can be integrated with the Struts framework. Spring can be integrated with the Hibernate framework. Any Java framework, Spring can integrate. Spring is free. Spring is open source. Spring is versatile. Spring is a non-invasive. Non-invasive means you no need to extend or implement Spring related interfaces or classes. You can develop your classes with the Pojo model, plain old Java objects. So there are several advantages are available. Spring framework developed in modular fashion. So there are several modules available in the Spring, like Spring Core module, Spring Context module, Spring AOP, Spring DAO, Spring ORM, Spring WebMVC, Spring Security, Spring Social, Spring Batch, right? Like that, there are so many modules are available in the Spring. All the modules are independent. It is a loosely coupled framework. In order to learn all the modules in the Spring, first we need to know the base module of the Spring, that is Spring Core module. What is a Spring Core? Spring Core module is all about dependency management. Spring Core module is all about dependency management. How to develop the classes with loosely coupling and how to manage the dependencies in the classes, that we are going to learn by using core module. So in order to manage the dependencies by using core module, we are using IOC container and dependency injection. So we have learned IOC container. So what is IOC container? IOC container is a principle which is responsible to manage and collaborate dependencies in our application. When we are developing a project, several classes will be available in our project. Some classes will be controllers, some classes will be service classes, some classes will be DAO classes. Like that, several classes will be available in our application. Okay, so here when we are having several classes, one class wants to talk to another class. Okay, one class wants to talk to another class. Then we need to create the object or we need to extend the properties. Then tightly coupling will happen. To avoid that tightly coupling, we are going for dependency injection using IOC container. So IOC container is a principle which is responsible to manage and collaborate dependencies. IOC container is a principle which is responsible to manage and collaborate dependencies among the classes. Right. Next one, what is dependency injection? The process of injecting one class object into another class object is called as dependency injection. Okay. Here we discussed about one concept called strategy design pattern. So what is the strategy design pattern? Guys, do you remember what is the strategy design pattern? Anybody? What is strategy design pattern? Develop the classes with loosely coupling. It is used to develop the classes with loosely coupling. When we have multiple solutions, You can change what to one, you can use one solution in the runtime. So when we have multiple algorithms to solve a problem, choosing one algorithm in the runtime is called as strategy design pattern. That strategy design pattern having some rules. Favor composition over inheritance. Use interfaces instead of implementation classes. Code should be open for extension. Code should be closed for modification. Those design patterns we have to follow. So we have done that strategy design pattern. Then we have developed Spring application creation. Spring application creation. Then we discussed about dependency Spring Bean configuration file, XML, Spring Bean config file. So setter injection, constructor injection, setter injection, constructor injection, field injection. So what is a setter injection? The process of injecting dependent object into target object using setter method is called as setter injection. The process of injecting one class object into another class object by using setter method is called as setter injection. Then what is a constructor injection? The process of injecting one class object into another class object using constructor is called as constructor injection. Then the process of injecting one class object into another class object using field is called as field injection. Yesterday we discussed about the differences between setter constructor and field injection also. Now, after this, we learnt about manual wiring, using ref attribute in the XML configuration. Then we learnt about auto wiring by name and by type. Auto wiring by name and by type. So with this XML, we learned these concepts. Then after, we started our discussion related to Spring Boot. So can you guys tell me what is a Spring Boot? Can you guys please respond in the chat? What is a Spring Boot? Anyone? What is a Spring Boot, guys? What is Spring Boot? Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring applications with less configurations. Spring Boot is one approach to develop our Spring-based applications with less configurations. Okay. Now, Spring Boot having several advantages. Spring Boot advantages. What are the advantages of the Spring Boot? Easy to develop the applications. Starter forms are available to simplify the configuration. Embedded servers are available. Auto configuration is available. Okay. So many advantages are there why we are going for Spring Boot. Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring-based applications with minimal or less configurations. Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring-based applications with minimal or less configurations. Got it? Now, embedded servers, starter forms, auto configuration, actuators. These are the advantages of going for Spring Boot. Okay. Spring Boot application creation. How many ways we can create Spring Boot application? Two ways, by using IDE and by using initializer website. When you use IDE also, internally, it is going to communicate with the initializer website only to create the boot application. Now, start class in the Spring Boot. We discussed about what is start class in Spring Boot. What is the start class in the Spring Boot? The entry point of boot application is called as start class. Spring Boot application execution will begin from start class only. So inside the start class, we have Spring Boot application annotation. So at the rate, Spring Boot application annotation is available. We discussed about component scanning. What is a component scanning? What is a component scanning? The process of identifying the bean classes available in our project is called as a component scanning. Component scanning is going to start from base package. We can configure more than one base package also by using component scan annotation. And the most important thing is Spring application.run method. Spring application.run method is the entry point for boot application execution. So this Spring application.run method is a predefined method. Spring application is a predefined class and it is having a run method. This run method contains the bootstrapping logic. This run method contains the bootstrapping logic to start our boot application. Guys, these points are very important. Spring Boot. Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring application with less configuration. Advantages: starter forms, auto configuration, embedded servers, actuators. Like that, there are so many advantages are there. We know how to create the boot application. We have seen that. Creating application using initializer website as well as by using IDE. When we create the boot application, by default one class will be created. That class is called as start class in the Spring Boot. Spring Boot start class is the entry point for boot application execution. Spring Boot application annotation will be available in the start class, right? This annotation is equal to 3 annotations: @Spring Boot configuration, @enable auto configuration, @component scanning. Component scanning is the process of identifying Spring Bean classes available in our application, right? So as part of this component scanning, it is scanning the base package. The package which contains the start class is called as a base package. After that, it is going to scan sub packages of the base package. You can configure more than one sub package also by writing this annotation at the start class. Okay, this is we are going to do by using @component scanning. All right. Spring application.run method. It is the entry point for boot application execution. It contains logic to start our boot application. We discussed about banner in Spring Boot. We discussed about runners in Spring Boot. And we discussed about how IOC is creating in the Spring Boot. How IOC creating in Spring Boot. So are we creating IOC container in the Spring Boot? Are we creating IOC in the Spring Boot? Or programmer is creating the IOC in the Spring Boot? Programmer is not creating the IOC in the Spring Boot. Programmer creating the Spring Boot, or Spring Boot only creating the programmer creating the IOC container in the Spring Boot, or Spring Boot creating IOC container? Programmer is not creating the IOC because IOC creation is a common requirement for every programmer. Every project which is developing by using Spring or Spring Boot, they have to create the IOC. Why everybody should create the IOC container? So IOC container creation is a part of run method only. So based on the starters, IOC container will create based on starter, based on POM starter, based on POM starter. If it is web starter, it is using one class to create the IOC. If it is a WebFlex starter, it is using another class to create the IOC. If it is a normal Spring Boot starter, it is using one class to start the IOC. So depends on your POM starter, IOC container will be created. Depends upon your POM starter, IOC container will be created. How IOC creating in the Spring Boot we understood. Then we discussed about stereotype annotations. So what are the stereotype annotations we have learned, guys? What are the stereotype annotations we have learned? @component, @service, @repository. @component, @service, @repository. Component, service, and repository. Then after we discussed about @configuration, and @bean, @configuration and @bean. So if you want to customize any bean creation in our application, then we can write the method by using @bean. If you have any if you want to customize any bean creation, then you can do that creation by using @bean annotation. And we have @configuration. @configuration to represent our Java class as a configuration class. @bean is writing at the method level. All the annotations we have seen are class level annotations. Only bean annotation is method level annotation. Controller, REST controller we have not discussed. In the WebMVC module, we are going to learn the controller and REST controller. So after this, we discussed about bean scopes concept. Bean scopes concept. Singleton scope will be available. Prototype scope will be available. Singleton prototype. What is the default scope of a Spring Bean? What is the default scope of a Spring Bean? Singleton. That means only one object will be created. If you want to create multiple objects for the Spring Bean, then we need to make them as prototype. Singleton means only one object will be created. Prototype means multiple objects will be created. We discussed about qualifier and profile. So when to go for a qualifier? When we are doing auto wiring to resolve the ambiguity using name of the bean, then we can use @qualifier. When we are doing the dependency injection through auto wiring, when we are doing dependency injection through auto wiring, if you want to identify the bean using the name, then you can use @qualifier annotation. Qualifier annotation we can use only with auto wiring. Qualifier annotation we can use only with the auto wiring. If auto wiring is not available, then a qualifier is not required. There is no use of qualifier. When the auto wiring is happening, if you want to identify the bean with the name, then you will go for qualifier. Suppose your beans are not having a name. So to resolve the ambiguity, we can use primary, primary annotation. Primary annotation to make one bean as auto wire candidate with priority. When the interface having more than one implementation, then we will get ambiguity problem in the auto wiring in the by type mode. To resolve that ambiguity problem, we are using primary annotation. We are using primary annotation. And we discussed about bean life cycle. Bean life cycle. IOC container is taking care of object creation, object destruction. Complete life cycle of the Spring Beans managing by IOC container. As part of that process, if you want to customize something, if you want to execute lifecycle methods, then you can go for that. So in these lifecycle methods, we have two approaches. One is interface approach. Interface approach. What are the interfaces we have? Initializing bean and disposable bean. Initializing bean and disposable bean interfaces are available. If you want to go with the annotation approach, if you want to go with the annotation approach, then we will go for @post construct and pre-destroy. @post construct and pre-destroy. Are you clear? How many places we can use auto wide annotation? At what places I can use auto wide annotation? Where I can use auto wide annotation in the project, in the classes? Guys, where I can use auto wide annotation? I can use at the variable level. I can use at the constructor level. I can use at the setter method level. I can use at the variable level. I can use at the setter method level. I can use at the constructor level also. Are you clear? Are you clear with my point? Yeah. Very good. So what is framework? Web framework, ORM framework, application development framework, Spring framework advantages, Spring modules, Spring core module, IOC container, dependency injection, strategy design pattern, application creation, bean config file creation, setter injection, constructor injection, field injection, manual wiring using ref attribute, auto wiring with by name and by type, What is a Spring Boot? What is a Spring Boot? So Spring Boot is one approach to develop Spring applications with less configurations. Spring Boot advantages: Spring Boot application creation, start class in the Spring Boot, Spring Boot application annotation, Spring Boot application annotation. Okay. What is a component scanning? Spring application run method internals, Spring application dot run method internals, banner creation, customizing the banner and banner modes, banner and banner modes, runners in the Spring Boot. So here we have two runners. One is app runner, another one is command line runner. Application runner is available and command line runner is available. Application runner available, command line runner available. Now how IOC getting created, how IOC getting created in Spring Boot? We are not going to create the IOC, Boot only creating the IOC as part of run method. Stereotype annotations, @component, @service, @repository. So these all are belongs to same family, a thin line of difference available between these three annotations. When your class is a normal Java class, we can go and use component. If your classes are having some business logic, then we are using @service annotation for them. If your class is communicating with the database, then we will use @repository. To represent the Java class as a configuration class, we will use @configuration annotation. If you want to customize any bean creation with your own logic, then we will use @bean annotation. Bean scopes are available, singleton scope available, prototype scope available, singleton and prototype. These all are interview questions, guys. These all are interview questions. So what is the start class? How start class will execute? What is component scanning? What is stereotype annotation? What is auto wiring? What is bean scope? How to execute bean? How to achieve bean lifecycle? How to customize the banner in the Spring Boot? How Spring Boot will work internally? What is auto configuration? How to scan multiple packages, right? So what is the default scope of the Spring Bean? How to change the bean scope? How to do auto wiring? What is how to resolve the ambiguity problem? All these are interview questions. So when you attend an interview, all these questions they are going to ask. Say great content we covered in the last 1 month of time. So what is a Spring Boot? How to work with the Spring Boot, the internals of Spring Boot, everything we have understood. Are you guys confident? Lot of things we have learned, almost 32 topics we have discussed in the last 1 month. Are you guys confident on all these topics? And a beautiful notes also prepared for you. A beautiful notes also prepared for you. So if you go through these notes, then that is sufficient to crack any interview. If you go through these notes, that is sufficient to crack any interview. A beautiful notes also prepared. And I am uploading the notes on daily basis. Okay. Super. Next one. Next one. We are going to start with so what is the annotation we are going to use? In the XML approach, we used bean scope annotation, right? Here in the annotation based configuration, we can use @scope annotation. In the XML, I have shown you how to change the bean scope, right? If you want to change the bean scope through annotations, then we can use @scope annotation. @scope annotation. Guys, do you feel the last 1 month that you spent with me is worthy? The last 1 month that you spent with me, do you feel it is worthy? Right. The next upcoming 2 months is more interesting. The upcoming 2 months is more important, most important. We are going to learn REST API. We are going to learn microservices. Those are very, 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 very important. How to develop REST APIs in the Spring Boot, how to develop microservices in the Spring Boot. Okay. How to work with Swagger, how to work with security, how to work with microservices communication, how to work with Kafka, how to work with Redis, how to work with Docker, how to develop reactive based microservices, how to communicate from one REST API to another REST API using REST template by using web client. Lot of things we are going to learn. Another 2 months, you are going to learn a content which is 20,000 rupees worthy. Nobody will cover the content like this and with internals in this detail with proper notes. I hope you can feel the difference between other institute trainers and myself. So what is the difference that you observe? What is the difference that you observe between other institute trainers and here? Here in detailed internals are discussing, proper notes is maintained, and every day notes is uploading so that you guys can go through that notes and you can practice. You can feel the difference. Okay, quality content we are giving. We are not wasting your time by teaching unwanted stuff. Whatever is really required for you, that we are discussing here. Okay, fine guys. So with this we completed our Spring Boot concept. The next one we are going to start with data JPA. So how to develop persistence layer by using data JPA. Okay, that is our next topic. So before going to start this data JPA concept, first we need to do environment setup. Everybody should install a database. Everybody should install a database in your system right now. So the next module, I can say the next topic that we are going to learn, Spring Data JPA. Spring Data JPA. So what is the purpose of this Spring Data JPA? Spring, it is used to develop persistence layer in our application. What is data JPA? It is used to develop persistence layer in our application. It is used to develop persistent layer in our application. The logic which is responsible to communicate with the database is called as persistence logic. Database communication logics we are going to develop by using this data JPA concept. What is data JPA? Okay, 1 second. Spring Data JPA nodes. Yes, fine. Spring Data JPA. Spring Data JPA is used to develop persistence logic in our application. What is persistence logic? The logic which is responsible, the logic which is responsible to communicate with the database is called as persistence logic. Data JPA is used to develop persistence logic in our application. So what is meaning of persistence logic? The logic which is responsible to communicate with the database is called as persistence logic. Already we have JDBC existing technologies to develop persistence logic. What are the existing technologies are available to develop persistence logic? Already we have JDBC, Spring JDBC, Hibernate, Spring ORM to develop persistence logic. You guys learnt JDBC. By using JDBC, you can communicate with the database. You can perform the DB operations like a CRUD operations you can perform. Spring JDBC is also available to develop the persistence layer. Hibernate is also available to develop the persistence layer. Spring ORM is also available to develop persistence logic. We can develop the persistence logic by using JDBC, Spring JDBC, Hibernate, Spring ORM to develop persistence logic. Spring Data JPA, why? When these many things are already available to develop the persistence layer, then why we need to go for only data JPA? In JDBC, we have to write boilerplate code. In Spring JDBC, we have to write the boilerplate code. Hibernate also boilerplate code. some common logics we need to write in every application. Data JPA simplified persistence logic by providing repositories. Data JPA simplified Data JPA simplified persistence logic. Data JPA simplified persistence logic development by providing predefined interfaces. By providing predefined interfaces. JPA provided methods to perform the CRUD operations. You no need to write any method to perform the CRUD operations. Data JPA provided methods to perform CRUD operations. Sir, I want to insert a record. You no need to write a single line of code also. JPA provided a method. Using that method, you can perform CRUD operations. Sir, I want to update a record. I want to delete a record. I want to insert a record. For updation, deletion, retrieval, you no need to write any logic. You don't need to write any logic. So if you go for a Hibernate, then what you need to do? You need to write the methods with logic. For example, assume this. You have one table called book details. You have one table called book details table. For the book details table, you have created one class called book DAO. You have created one class called book DAO. Now, inside this book DAO, what you need to do? You need to write a save method. For the save method, you need to write the logic to insert a record, right? Inside this save method, you can use JDBC or Hibernate code, whatever you want. And if you want to update a record, then you need to write a update method. Save method we need to write with some logic. Update method we need to write with some logic. If you want to retrieve the record, then you need to write one method to retrieve the record. If you want to delete the record, if you want to find the record, then you need to write some logic in that. If you want to delete a record, then you need to write some logic in that. So these are common operations that we need to do for every table. Save the record, update the record, retrieve the record, and delete the record. Retrieve the record. So these things we are doing for one table. Book details is one table. To perform the operations with the book details, I'm creating book DAO. In the book DAO, I am writing these methods. Similarly, I am having one more table called product details table. I'm having one more table called products details table. Then what I will do? I will create one more class with a name called product DAO. I will create one more class with a name called product DAO. In the product DAO also, same methods I'm going to write. And I have another table, user master. There is another table in the project which is called user master. For user master, I'm creating one more DAO. In this user DAO, I need to write all the methods again. Guys, if you observe, am I writing same methods in all the DAO classes or not? If you observe, am I writing same methods in all the DAO classes or not? Book details DAO, book DAO, product DAO, user DAO. If you observe, is there any common logic that I am doing? Is there a common logic available? Come on, guys. I want to perform CRUD operations in my application. Technology can be anything. Maybe you use JDBC, maybe you use Spring JDBC or Hibernate or Spring ORM. It doesn't matter. We need to create the DAO classes like this. We need to write the save method, which is common for every table to insert a record, right? Save method is common for every table. Save operation is common for every table. Similarly, update operation is common. Retrieve operation is common. Delete operation is also common. We need to perform common operations in all the tables. Now, to perform the CRUD operations in one table, we are creating one DAO. Guys, in the real time, for every table, one DAO class will be created. If you have 100 tables in the project, for 100 tables, 100 DAOs will be created. Every table will have one DAO. One DAO is responsible to perform the operations with only one database table. Book DAO is responsible to perform operations with book details table. Product DAO is responsible to perform operations with a product details table. User DAO is responsible to perform operations with the user table. Okay, here I am writing save method, update method, retrieve method, delete method. These are CRUD operation methods. These are not only for one table, for every table in the project we need to perform CRUD operations. Okay, so save method, inside the save method, I may write Hibernate logic, or I may write JDBC logic, or Spring JDBC, or Spring ORM. But these four methods we have to write inside the methods, whether you implement JDBC logic or DAO with the Spring DAO or Spring ORM or Hibernate, it's up to you. But you have to write these common methods. Now tell me, if I have 1000 tables in the project, then how many DAOs I need to create? If we have 1000 tables, how many DAOs I need to create? 1000 DAOs I need to create. For every table, one DAO class we are going to create. In every DAO, four methods are common. 1000 into 4, how many methods you need to write now? 4000 methods you need to write. The 4000 methods logic is same or logic is different, just a table name is different, right? Save method, if you call the save method in the book DAO, it will insert a record into book details. When you call the product DAO save method, it will insert the record into product table. When you call the save method in the user DAO, it will insert into user table. Logic is same, only table name is different. If we develop our application by using JDBC or Hibernate or Spring ORM, you need to write this kind of repeated logic in every DAO class. That is the problem. Are you guys getting my point? We can develop the persistence logic. The logic which is responsible to communicate with the database is called as persistence logic. The logic which is responsible to communicate with the database is called as persistence logic. We have several options in the Java to develop that persistence logic. JDBC we can use, Spring JDBC we can use, Hibernate we can use, Spring ORM we can use. Okay, why we are not using them now? So if you think about a real project implementation, 1000 tables will be available in the database. For those 1000 tables, we need to perform the CRUD operations. So to perform CRUD operation for one table, one DAO class will be created. One DAO class will be created. Now, in that DAO, we are writing the methods to perform the CRUD operations. Those methods are common for every DAO. For example, 4 operations are common for every table. So 4 methods I am writing in every DAO. 1000 tables if I have, 1000 DAOs I am going to create. In every DAO 4 methods, 1000 into 4, 4000 methods we are going to write to perform just CRUD operations. Is it recommended? 4000 methods we are writing just to perform the CRUD operations. To overcome this problem, only data JPA came into market. Boss, if you want to perform the CRUD operations in the tables, then you no need to write these methods. I will give you these methods. You just call my methods to execute. If you want to perform the CRUD operations, you don't need to write a single method also. Data JPA is providing the methods for us. By using those methods, we can perform the CRUD operations. If you want to perform the CRUD operations for 1000 methods with normal Hibernate, 4000 methods you have to write. If you use data JPA to perform the CRUD operations, 0 methods you need to write. 0, absolutely 0. You no need to write anything. Data JPA providing some interfaces. You just need to extend the properties from the interfaces. Then you are going to call the methods of that interface. Then they are going to perform CRUD operations for you. Now, do you understand? When the Hibernate is already available, data JPA provided repository methods to perform CRUD operations. If we use data JPA, if we use data JPA, then we don't need to write logic. We don't need to write logic to perform CRUD operations. We don't need to write the logic to perform CRUD operations because data JPA will take care of that. Data JPA will take care of that. Guys, now, do you understand? When the Hibernate is already available, why we are going for data JPA? This is the reason. If you use Hibernate, you need to implement these common methods in every DAO. If you go for data JPA, then you no need to implement these methods. Data JPA will take care of these methods implementation. Data JPA provided some repositories. Data JPA provided repositories. Data JPA provided repository interfaces to perform CRUD operations. So what are the repository interfaces available? CRUD repository, one interface is available. JPA repository, one interface is available. Data JPA is used to develop persistent logic in our application. The logic which is responsible to communicate with the database is called as persistence logic. Already we have JDBC, Spring JDBC, Hibernate, Spring ORM to develop persistence logic. Data JPA simplified persistence logic development by providing predefined interfaces with methods. Right? Now, if we use any above concept, if we use JDBC or Spring JDBC or Hibernate, we need to write common logics in all the DAO classes. If we use JDBC or Spring JDBC or Hibernate or Spring ORM, then we should write common logics in all DAO classes to perform CRUD operations. Logic is same, just table name is going to different. Data JPA simplified persistence logic development by providing predefined interfaces with methods. Data JPA provided repository methods to perform CRUD operations. If we use data JPA, then we don't need to write the logic to perform CRUD operations because data JPA will take care of that logic. Data JPA will take care of that. Data JPA provided repository interfaces to perform the CRUD operations. One is CRUD repository, second one is JPA repository. CRUD repository and JPA repository both are available to perform CRUD operations. Sir, what is this CRUD repository and JPA repository? Tomorrow, whatever the DAO you are developing, if you want to perform the CRUD operations in your DAO, then you no need to write these methods. You just need to extend the properties from CRUD repository. You just extend the properties from CRUD repository. So we are going to create an interface and we are going to extend the properties from JPA interface. We no need to provide any logic here. For example, you want to perform the operations for book table. Okay, so here we have book details table. For book details table, we are going to create interface book repo. Book repo extends from CRUD repository. Book repo extends from CRUD repository. That's it, man. Your persistence logic is completed. Your persistence logic is completed for book details table. If you want to insert a record, or if you want to update a record, or if you want to delete a record, everything will be taken care by this interface. Public interface book repo extending the properties from CRUD repository. Similarly, if we have product details table, for product details table, we are going to create a product repo. We are going to create product repo. Product repo is extending the properties from CRUD repository. So similarly, if you want to perform the operations for user details table, if you want to perform the operations for user details table, then public interface user repository, public interface user repository. That's it. You no need to write any logic here because we are already extending the properties from CRUD repository. We are already extending the properties from CRUD repository, or you can extend the properties from JPA repository also. When your interface extend the properties from CRUD repository or JPA repository, they will take care of CRUD operations for your interfaces. You don't need to write the logic for that. You don't need to write the logic for that. For book tables, I have created a repository by extending the properties from CRUD repository. For a product table, I created one repository by extending from CRUD repository. For user details, I extended the properties from CRUD repository. Am I writing any methods here? I'm creating empty interfaces. Am I writing any methods here? I'm creating empty interfaces. Empty interfaces. Why? You no need to write the logic. Already this CRUD repository having the methods. If you want to insert a record, then you just call the method. If you want to update a record, you just call the method. If you want to delete a record, you just call the method. If you want to retrieve the record, you just call the method. Okay, so do we need to write the 4 methods in every repository interface, or we don't need to write them? Do I need to write them, or I no need to write them? I no need to write them. If you go for normal approach, we need to write these methods in every DAO. If you go for normal JDBC or Hibernate, we need to write these methods. If you are using Hibernate framework to develop the persistence logic, you need to create a DAO like this, and you need to write the methods, and you need to implement the methods common. If I have 4,000 tables, 4,000 DAOs, 4,000 into 4, 16,000 methods you need to write. 16,000 methods you need to write. So to overcome this problem, Data JPA came up with a concept called repository concept. Hey, Ashok, if you want to perform the CRUD operations, you don't need to write the logic because CRUD operations is common for every project. If you want to perform the CRUD operations, you create one interface and you extend the properties from CRUD repository. Then CRUD repository will provide the methods. You just call the methods to perform the CRUD operations. That is what it is telling. So if you have 1,000 tables, 1,000 interfaces you create, you no need to implement them. Implementation will be taken care by Data JPA. You just create the interface by extending the properties from CRUD repository or JPA repository. There are 2 repositories are available to perform the CRUD operations in the Data JPA. CRUD repository, JPA repository. CRUD repository methods to perform only CRUD operations. Methods to perform CRUD operations. Data JPA methods to perform CRUD operations plus pagination plus sorting plus QBE, query by example. So there are some additional features are available when we go for JPA repository. What are those additional features? You can write the pagination methods. You can write the sorting methods. You can use the pagination methods. You can use the sorting methods. You can use query by example methods. So what are these things, guys? We will discuss. When I start the JPA repository, then I will tell you all the concepts. For time being, you need to remember that there are 2 repository interfaces are available in the Data JPA to perform the CRUD operations. As a programmer, we don't need to write any logic to perform the CRUD operations in the Data JPA. We just need to extend the properties from these repositories. Okay. Now, how many methods I am writing to perform the CRUD operations in 3 tables, guys? How many methods I am writing to perform the CRUD operations in 3 tables? 0. If I have 1,000 tables, 0. If I have 10,000 tables, 0. I don't need to write anything because JPA already implemented those methods to perform CRUD operations in any table. Generally, if you go for JDBC or a Hibernate or Spring JDBC, you will create a DAO class like this. In this DAO, you will write the method and you need to implement that method. You need to write the logic for that to perform CRUD operations. For one table means it is okay. For two tables means it is okay. But what about 1,000 tables? What about 10,000 tables? If it is a complex banking application, 10,000 tables will be available. So if you want to perform CRUD operations for 10,000 tables, 10,000 into 4, 40,000 methods you have to write. Same logic, insert, update, delete, retrieve. So to overcome this problem, Data JPA came up with a concept called repository concept. CRUD repository, JPA repository. Hey programmer, if you want to perform the CRUD operations in your application, you no need to write single line of code. You no need to write single method also. I am providing you interfaces for you. You use my interfaces and you can perform the operations. You just create one dummy interface and extend the properties from my interface. Then I will play the game. That is what the Data JPA is telling. As a programmer, you no need to write a single method also. Do you want to perform CRUD operations in the book details table? Then create one interface, extend the properties from that. That's it. It will provide the methods to perform the CRUD operations. So do you want to perform the CRUD operations in the product table? Then create one repository, extend from CRUD repository. I will give you the methods to perform the CRUD operations. Do you want to perform CRUD operations in user details table? I will give you methods to perform that. You just extend the properties from my interface. You don't need to do anything else. You just create a interface, extend the properties from my interface. My interface will give you the methods. I will implement your repository in the runtime. I will provide the methods to perform CRUD operations. How beautiful it is. Guys, do you understand? Do you understand how beautiful it is? Single method also we don't need to write. Single method also we don't need to write to perform CRUD operations. Those things will be taken care by JPA. Sanjay, why to create an interface? Why can't we create a class and implement? If you implement, how many methods you need to implement, Mr. Sanjay? I have 10,000 tables. Can you implement all the 4 methods in the 10,000 DAOs? Do you want to write the 40,000 methods? Do you want to write the 40,000 methods? Do you want to implement them? If you want to write the methods, if you want to implement, you can go for Hibernate, or you can go for JDBC, or you can go for Spring JDBC. You can write the interface methods, implement on your own. I don't want to write that implementation because it is same now. Inserting a record. If you write in 1,000 tables also, logic will be same. I don't want to do that. That's why I am going for Data JPA. Data JPA will provide you a method to insert the record. You no need to write the logic to insert. You no need to write the logic to perform the CRUD operations. Data JPA will take care of that. Data JPA will take care of that. You no need to write that logic. You don't need to take that logic. Samjha? CRUD repository. CRUD repository providing the methods to perform CRUD operations. JPA repository also providing the methods to perform CRUD operations. In the JPA repository, along with the methods for CRUD operations, pagination support is available, sorting support is available, query by example support is available. QBE stands for query by example. It is used to create the queries dynamically. To generate the queries dynamically, we are going to use a concept called QBE, query by example. So we will discuss about all these methods available in the CRUD repository and JPA repository in the upcoming classes. Okay, guys, you got the clarity. What is the Data JPA? Why we are going for Data JPA? Did you get the clarity? What is Data JPA? Why we are going for Data JPA? Data JPA is used to develop persistence logic. What is the difference between Hibernate and Data JPA? Hibernate versus Data JPA. What is the difference, guys? Hibernate versus Data JPA. What is the difference? Can you guys tell me? What is the difference? In Hibernate, we should implement all methods to perform CRUD operations. Data JPA providing predefined methods to perform CRUD operations. Data JPA providing predefined methods to perform CRUD operations. In Hibernate, we should implement all methods to perform CRUD operations. Data JPA providing predefined methods to perform CRUD operations. In Hibernate, we should write the boilerplate code. In Hibernate, we should write boilerplate code. Boilerplate code, that means same code in multiple classes. Same code in multiple classes is called as boilerplate code. In data JPA, we don't need to write any method. We don't need to write any method because JPA repositories are providing methods, because JPA repositories providing methods for us. Those are called predefined methods. If you go for a Hibernate, you need to write the boilerplate code. If you go for a JPA will provide the methods for us to perform the operations. Okay, so in tomorrow's session, we are going to understand how to work with this. So how to create our first application by using JPA, that we are going to discuss in the tomorrow session. Okay, guys, are you clear with the introduction of JPA? It is the main advantage of going for JPA to simplify persistence logic. Without writing single method, we can perform CRUD operations by using JPA. If you go for a Hibernate, you need to write the logic to perform the CRUD operations. That logic will become boilerplate code. If you go for JPA, then it will provide the methods to perform the CRUD operations. JPA provided interfaces for us. CRUD repository interface available, JPA repository interface available. CRUD repository having the methods, JPA repository also having the methods. JPA repository having more methods when compared with CRUD repository. Pagination methods available, sorting methods available, query by example methods also available. Environment setup. Guys, install MySQL database server and MySQL workbench. MySQL DB server and MySQL workbench. MySQL workbench is a client software. MySQL database server software we need to install. MySQL database we need to install. MySQL workbench. MySQL workbench, it is just a client software to connect with the database. It is a client software. It is server software. So all of you install MySQL database and MySQL workbench before coming to tomorrow session. So tomorrow we need to start our first application development by using data JPA. Okay, thank you guys. With this, I'm stopping for today. We'll continue in tomorrow's session. Bye bye. Have a great day.